All right, so we're diving deep today into Act Normal. More specifically, episode 2 titled, Was It Worth It? And, you handed me this transcript, and wow, Jada and Des really get candid about fame and the choices they've made.
It is interesting how they frame everything around this question, was it worth it? Like unpacking that viral photo of Jada, their relationships, their careers, and they kind of hold up this mirror to their lives, inviting us all to reflect on our own choices too.
Oh, yeah, that photo, we've all had those caught lacking moments that we all dread. But what struck me was when Jada says, and I quote, "At first I was mortified. The internet can be brutal.
Hmm.
But then I thought, screw it. This is me, flaws and all. Talk about owning it right."
It's more than owning it, though, don't you think? It's like challenging this whole idea that we have to be perfect online, especially online. You see those flawless feeds and just feel inadequate. Jada choosing to embrace her natural self, it's like this breath of fresh air.
Totally. She's giving us permission to just be human,
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, though, is this pressure to be perfect amplified even more when you're the public eye? Like their lives are playing out under a microscope.
Absolutely. Every outfit, every relationship, every misstep is just analyzed and dissected by millions. So yeah, you have to appreciate the courage it takes to be vulnerable and authentic in that environment.
Makes you think if that scrutiny even plays into their relationships, too. They have such different views on publicizing their love lives. Jada wants someone who will show her off, while Des seems to value keeping things private. Could that be a reaction to the constant spotlight?
It's definitely a factor. Imagine the pressure of knowing that every date, every argument could be tabloid fodder. Someone like Des, she seems grounded and introspective, so it makes sense that she'd want to shield her relationships from that.
And yet they both seem to be drawn to complicated men, shall we say. They talk about attracting sucky partners in this pattern of heartbreak. What do you think it is about their world that might attract these types of relationships?
Well, the entertainment industry is known for being fast-paced, high stakes, lots of ego involved. And let's be honest, a certain level of superficiality, that can create a breeding ground for relationships that are based on just fleeting attraction rather than a genuine connection.
It's like they're surrounded by smoke and mirrors,
Right.
making it harder to see people for who they truly are.
Yeah.
Underneath the fame and fortune, they're just looking for what we all want. Someone who sees them, accepts them, and loves them for who they are.
And just the fact that they're having this conversation so openly is refreshing. It's like they're acknowledging that even with their success, they're still figuring things out, still learning, still searching for genuine connection.
Speaking of figuring things out, Des has some strong feelings about the expectations in the industry, especially when it comes to her music. She feels she hasn't received the same recognition as some of her peers, and she wonders if it's because she refuses to play that hypersexualized game.
That's a really insightful observation, and it points to a larger issue within the music industry. Look at the images we see, especially for female artists. It's often all about sex appeal and provocative lyrics. Des is challenging that, choosing to focus on empowering messages and positive vibes.
And she's doing it on her own terms, too. She's an independent artist, which means she's calling the shots. No record label telling her how to sing or what to wear. It takes guts, especially in an industry that tries to fit everyone in a box.
It's more than guts, though. Des has a clear vision for her music and her brand. She understands that authenticity is her strength. She's building a loyal fan base just by being herself. And that's a powerful lesson for anyone trying to navigate a world that often demands conformity.
It makes you think about your own life, right? Those times you feel the pressure to fit in, to play the game. Even when it doesn't feel right, Des shows us that it's possible to forge your own path, to find success on your own terms, and still find an audience that resonates with your authentic self.
And speaking of finding an audience, Jada and Des have a unique way of connecting with their listeners. They offer advice in a segment they call How to Act Normal.
Yeah. It's like they're the cool older sisters dispensing wisdom on all sorts of dilemmas. And the advice is surprisingly relatable, even if you aren't on the red carpet or dealing with paparazzi.
It's because they're drawing on their own experiences, their struggles, their own moments of feeling lost. They're not afraid to be vulnerable, to admit they don't have all the answers. And that vulnerability is what makes their advice powerful. It creates space for real conversation, for shared experiences, human connection.
And that connection, it has to be important, especially in an industry that can feel so isolating. Do you think? They're surrounded by people, but are those genuine connections? Or is it transactional, based on what each person can get from the other?
It's something they grapple with throughout the episode. They talk about how hard it is to make and keep friends, especially when everyone is striving for success. They've both decided to cultivate friendships outside the industry, people who ground them, who see them for who they are, not what they represent.
It makes you realize that true friendship isn't about followers or money. It's about those genuine connections. The
Yeah.
people who are there for you no matter what, the ones you can call at 2 a.m. when you're having a meltdown, and they'll be there with ice cream and a listening ear.
That's a message that goes way beyond Hollywood. It's a reminder that we all need those authentic connections, the people who see us for who we are, flaws and all.
Now, you mentioned that Jada and Des are reflecting on their choices. And one of the big shifts for Jada seems to be her approach to self-care. Remember that party girl persona looks like she's traded late nights and champagne for early morning hikes and green smoothies.
It's a big transformation, right? Shedding that old skin and embracing a more authentic version of herself. She talks about putting her well-being first, making time for things that bring her joy, learning to say no to things that drain her energy.
And get this, she even mentions working out. Who knew Jada was a gym rat? But seriously, it's inspiring to see her prioritize her health, physical and mental.
It reminds us that self-care isn't just bubble baths and face masks. It's about making choices to nourish our bodies and minds and souls. Setting boundaries, saying no when we need to, doing things that bring us joy and restore our energy.
And it's easy to get caught up in the hustle of life, especially in a demanding industry like theirs. You put your own needs on the back burner, you sacrifice well-being for success. But Jada shows us it doesn't have to be that way. You can be ambitious and successful and still prioritize your well-being.
It's about finding that balance, right? That sweet spot where you're chasing your goals but taking care of yourself physically and emotionally.
Absolutely. Now, Jada also talks about co-parenting with Loyal's father, and her upbringing really shaped her views. You can tell her parents' amicable divorce had a big impact.
It's amazing how our childhoods can influence our adult relationships. Jada talks about clear boundaries and open communication, and how cordial co-parenting, even when it's tough, is always better than conflict, especially for the child.
And it's not just talk. She walks the walk. You see it on social media, how they support each other at Loyal's events. They've made this healthy and respectful co-parenting dynamic, even though their romantic relationship didn't work out.
It shows their maturity and commitment to Loyal's needs. They're showing us it's possible to co-parent with grace and dignity, even under public scrutiny.
It makes you think about your own relationships, right? Co-parenting friendships, romantic partnerships. How do you handle those dynamics? How do you set boundaries, communicate effectively, and prioritize healthy interactions?
Those are questions worth thinking about, and ones that Jada and Des are encouraging us to explore through their How to Act Normal segment. They're making a space for open dialogue, sharing experiences, and learning from each other's journeys.
And isn't that what it's all about? Connecting with each other, sharing our stories, realizing we're not alone in the ups and downs of life. Even in a world that feels superficial and chaotic, there's still room for authenticity, vulnerability, and genuine human connection.
Absolutely. Jada and Des remind us that even when we feel like we're caught lacking, we can choose to embrace our imperfections, learn from our mistakes, and keep striving to act normal in a world that's anything but.
It's funny, we talk about Jada evolving and embracing self-care, but Des' journey as an independent artist, it's almost like its own form of self-care too, right? Like she's chosen to protect her creative vision and not compromise just to fit in.
You're right. It is about staying true to your values and your vision, even when the industry wants you to go a different way. Which isn't easy when people are constantly telling you what to do to make it.
She even mentions how some producers wanted her to sex up her image and her lyrics, basically saying, if you want to be a star, you got to play the game.
Exactly. The kind of pressure that can push artists down a path that doesn't feel authentic, like a Faustian bargain, you know? Compromise your values for fame and fortune. But Des, she chose a different path.
And the music industry has a long history of exploiting artists, especially women. It's a system designed to pump out hits, and that can mean sacrificing individuality and artistic integrity.
It's like a factory churning out cookie-cutter pop stars. But Des is proving you can break that mold. You can make your own path. And you can still find success on your own terms.
And she's thriving as an independent artist. She's not just getting by, she's killing it, building a loyal fan base, touring, making music she's passionate about.
It shows her talent, her work ethic, her belief in herself. She's not waiting for permission from anyone. She's making her own opportunities and defining success her own way.
Which is so powerful for anyone listening, right? Finding your voice, honing your craft, building something meaningful, even if it's brick by brick, without compromising your vision or values.
It speaks to self-belief too, right? Believing in your talent, your worth, your ability to create something special, even when the world tells you otherwise.
Makes you wonder how many talented artists are out there being silenced or pushed aside because they don't fit some narrow definition of success. How many voices are we missing out on because of this pressure to conform?
It's a loss for everyone. When we limit creative expression, we lose innovation and diversity. We get this bland landscape that lacks the richness and depth that comes from different voices and perspectives.
So what can we take away from Dez's journey? It's about having the courage to be different, to stand out, embrace your unique qualities, even if they don't fit the mold.
And realizing that true success goes beyond just fame and fortune. It's about creating something meaningful, something that resonates with you, makes a difference in the world, even a small one.
I love that. Now, earlier we talked about Jada's self-care evolution, and one thing that really struck me was how intentional she is about setting boundaries. She even mentions turning down hosting gigs, even though they paid well, because it was draining her.
That's putting well-being above external validation, right? Knowing your limits and saying no to things that don't fit your values or goals, even when there's money involved.
And that's a lesson for so many parts of life,
Yeah.
right? Work relationships, everyday stuff. It's easy to overextend yourself and end up feeling burned out and resentful.
It's about knowing what energizes you and what drains you, and choosing to prioritize things that bring you joy and fulfillment.
Which is easier said than done, I know,
Uh-huh.
especially in a world that's all about productivity and achievement. We're programmed to think our worth is tied to how much we do, how much we achieve, how much we earn.
It's a constant pressure that can lead to burnout and disconnection. But Jada shows us it's okay to slow down, to say no, to put our well-being first, even if it means giving up some perceived success.
And speaking of success, let's go back to that "was it worth it" question. Both Jada and Des have done amazing things, but they've also had their share of challenges and heartbreak. So what's the takeaway? What are they trying to tell us?
I think it's about understanding that success isn't the finish line. It's the whole journey. And that journey will have ups and downs, twists and turns, moments of victory and moments of defeat.
It's about learning to handle those challenges, to get back up when you fall, and to keep going, even when the path is uncertain.
And defining success for yourself, not based on what society expects or what fame and fortune look like.
Because ultimately, it's not about what you achieve, but who you become along the way. It's about living authentically, meaningfully in line with your values, even if it means taking a different path.
And realizing that true fulfillment doesn't come from what others think, but from that inner peace and contentment that comes from being true to yourself.
And speaking of being true to yourself, let's talk co-parenting. Jada talks about how her own upbringing, her parents' amicable divorce, shaped how she approaches co-parenting with Loyal's father.
It reminds us that we're shaped by our experiences. And those experiences affect how we handle relationships, parenting, even our own sense of self. Jada choosing to make co-parenting work, even when it's tough, shows her maturity and her commitment to putting Loyal first.
It's a great example for anyone dealing with co-parenting, blended families, or just complicated family dynamics.
It's about recognizing that even when relationships end, the responsibility of parenting doesn't learn. And you can create a healthy, supportive environment for kids, even when the adults aren't together anymore.
And it's not just about setting a good example for Loyal. It's about showing him healthy relationship patterns. He's learning that you can disagree, have different views, and still treat each other with respect.
That's a valuable lesson that will help him throughout life, right? It's about understanding that even in conflict or disagreement, you can still be civil and respectful.
And that's so relevant today when everything online is so negative and hostile. Jada and Des show us you can have respectful conversations even when you disagree.
It's not about hiding your opinions or pretending to agree. It's about recognizing that everyone has a right to their perspective. And we can talk constructively without attacking each other.
It's about making space for open dialogue, understanding, and empathy, even when we don't see eye to eye. And isn't that what we all need more of?
Absolutely. It starts with each of us choosing to be more mindful, respectful, and compassionate both online and in person.
Now, one thing I noticed about their How to Act Normal segment is how they make it a place for vulnerability and authenticity. They're not afraid to share their own struggles, their own doubts and uncertainties.
And that vulnerability is what makes them so relatable. It's like they're saying, we're all in this together. We all mess up. We all feel lost sometimes. And it's okay to ask for help, to lean on each other, to share and learn from each other.
That's like a virtual support group, right? A community of people figuring out life together,
Yeah.
supporting each other, offering guidance, a sense of belonging.
And that sense of belonging is so important, especially when the world feels isolating and disconnected. It reminds us we're not alone in our struggles, that there are people who get it, and we can find comfort and strength in sharing our experiences.
It's about creating a safe space to be vulnerable, to be real, to be yourself without judgment or rejection. And isn't that what we all want deep down? To be seen, heard, accepted for who we are.
And to know that we're not alone in this crazy thing called life. that even when we feel caught lacking, we can choose to embrace our imperfections, learn from our mistakes, and keep trying to act normal in a world that's constantly changing what that even means.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into Jada and Dez's world, I want to bring it back to you, the listener. What stood out to you most from this conversation?
What were your aha moments, and how can you apply those lessons to your own life, your relationships, your own journey of self-discovery?
Think about it. Jada and Dez are holding up this mirror, challenging us to ask ourselves, what compromises am I making? Where am I holding back? What can I do to live a more authentic life?
Yeah, and it's not about comparing ourselves to celebrities. It's about taking those universal truths, those little nuggets of wisdom, and applying them to our own lives.
Like redefining success. It's so easy to get caught up in the money, the status, the awards. But Jada and Dez remind us that true success is something more.
It's about living by your values, chasing your passions, building a life that feels meaningful, regardless of what other people think.
That really hits home, especially today when we're constantly told what we should be doing, who we should be.
It's about taking back our own stories, defining success on our own terms, creating a life that feels real and true to who we are.
And realizing that success isn't this straight line. There will be setbacks, challenges, doubts, but those moments are what shape us. They teach us resilience and help us understand ourselves and our place in the world.
And that's where that How to Act Normal segment comes in. It's not just giving advice. It's about making a space where it's okay to be vulnerable, to admit we don't have it all figured out, and to learn from each other.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're all figuring it out. We all make mistakes. We all struggle. And it's okay. It's part of being human.
And in those moments of shared vulnerability, that's where we connect. We realize we're not alone, and we find strength and support in each other's journeys.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a challenge. Inspired by Jada and Dez, think of a situation in your life where you're not sure how to act. A tough conversation, a decision, a challenge you're facing.
Now imagine giving advice to a friend going through the same thing. What wisdom would you share? What have you learned from your own experiences that could help someone else?
Really think about that. And remember, even when you feel like you're messing up, you have valuable experiences and things to share. Your voice matters.
And you're not alone. We're all in this together, trying to figure things out, trying to make sense of it all, trying to live authentic and meaningful lives.
So keep talking about these things. Share your thoughts. And remember, even when you feel lost, there's a light inside you, guiding you towards your own version of normal. In a world that's always changing what that even means.